Hello there, live at Fivers. This is Peter McLaughlin with BlueSky Hypnosis. Today is Friday, so today is Friday live at 5. So glad you could join. Today's topic is going to be no more anxiety. A little bit under the weather today, so I am asking for your forbearance in advance. Doing some chelation to get out heavy metals, and it's really kicking my ass, that is for sure. Anyway, looking forward to today. Hope you are too. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free. Please be sure to put them in the comments section. I love when we can get into an interaction, when it can be interactive, when I'm going back and forth based on your comments, based on your questions. That is the best part of this as far as I'm concerned. It takes us in directions that I wouldn't be going by myself. That is for certain. Standard disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I am not a psychologist. If you have significant issues, anxiety, panic attacks, make sure you check in with your licensed medical and psychological professionals. Everything I talk about is based on the work I've done over the last 16 years as a hypnotherapist and as a life coach. I do work one-on-one with people all over the world utilizing Zoom, so if you think I might be able to be of assistance to you, you can always sign up for a 20-minute free session. With that, I want to just start talking about what is anxiety. I mean, when you read about it online, it says several different things. One of which is a real or perceived threat, and that could be something in the present moment, or it could be something, excuse me, or something in the future. So it's really great if you can define what that is. And I like to simplify everything. So I bring that back down to your autonomic nervous system. Autonomic just means automatic. The part of your subconscious mind that controls virtually every aspect of your body. And that autonomic nervous system only has two modes. It has rest and digest, that's the parasympathetic mode, and it has fight or flight. Everybody is familiar with that. That is the sympathetic mode of the autonomic nervous system. If you're not in one of those modes, you are in the other one. And so when a person is feeling anxiety, when they're feeling stress, when they're feeling panic, they are most definitely in the sympathetic mode of the autonomic nervous system. Why does this happen? Well, from the perspective of a hypnotist, remember, we're talking about the subconscious mind. That's what's controlling your autonomic nervous system. From the perspective of the subconscious mind, there is something either in your immediate environment or in your mind. It could be entirely your imagination, or it could be a memory of something that happened in the past. You may or may not be consciously aware of it. But this phenomenon, this thing that's in your subconscious mind, is perceived as a threat. Your subconscious mind perceives this as a threat. And it moves you into this fight or flight response so that you can fight or you can run away. Now, for most people who suffer from anxiety, there is nothing in their immediate environment, often I should say, excuse me, that could be construed as a threat, like a lion running at you. That's what the system is designed for. But it may be something else entirely. As I said, it could be a memory of something that gets triggered by something someone says, by a color, by a sound, by a smell. Or it could be you open up the mail and you see a bill there and you're like, how am I going to pay this bill? That moves you into that same mode of the autonomic nervous system, even though the bill is not a lion running at you, threatening your life in that moment. It is still perceived by your subconscious mind as the same kind of threat. And the subconscious mind, as I love to say all the time, has no concept of time, and its job is to protect you. So if something happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 5 years ago, and the subconscious mind still perceives that as a threat, in other words, it hasn't been resolved, then if something triggers that, you could move into a panic attack. You could move into feeling anxiety. You could have, if some people think you can have anxiety attacks, some people think you can't. I don't know that I like to even try to parse the difference between these, but it's all a form of stress, and stress is a form of a threat, which is perceived by your subconscious mind. This then helps us to understand what we would need to do in order to resolve this. So if there's a lion running at you, you want to feel that stress. You want to feel that anxiety, whatever you want to call it, panic, whatever, so that your body can be energized with adrenaline and you can run, you can fight, you can do whatever you need to do to preserve your life. But if it's something, your partner is looking at you in a certain way, and that look that they're giving you triggers something from your past, an old trauma, and you feel yourself become flooded with this stress response, feeling that anxiety, like a shallow heartbeat and your heart is beating, shallow breathing and your heart is beating rapidly, then that's not super productive in that moment. Again, if your life is not at risk, if it's not, God forbid, some kind of a physical altercation, if it's just, a run-of-the-mill argument with your partner and it's kicking off something from the past, it can move you into this fight or flight response as if a lion is running at you. And now it's going to be really hard for you to resolve this conflict with your partner. Chances are that as you go deeper into this conflict, it's going to move both of you into the fight or flight response, where your thinking goes from your prefrontal cortex down back to your lizard brain. I have to apologize. And when it goes there, your hope of resolving this amicably, intelligently, goes right down the drain. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's see who's here and if anybody has any comments or questions so far. And if you do, if you suffer from anxiety or panic attacks, and you're willing to share that with us, please let us know. Let us know how long this has been going on. If it began in the wake of something traumatic, or if it feels like it just came out of nowhere. All of these things would be really interesting, and I'd love to just kind of go back and forth with you and see if we can shed some light on this. No guarantees, but often we can. All right. The Witch's Cat, good morning from Australia. Good morning to you too. Glad you're here. Sarah's here. Hello to you too. Trisha, free to be me. I'm sorry to hear you're not feeling up to par. Yes, that is true. Lorraine Chambers, hi from Ireland. This is so awesome. I love this fact that we're convening from all over the world. I mean, you can say, I guess technology is a double-sided sword. And one of those sides is really cool, how we can do stuff like this that we couldn't do 10, 20 years ago. Here is Estelle. I hope you're feeling better, Peter. Thank you so much for that. Suzanne Livingston, shout out to you, and you're welcome. Witch's Cat, thank you. And Dara, here's another person from Ireland. Awesome to have you here, Dara. I don't know if I mentioned this, but relatives on one side of my family are from near Cork. Let's see. The Witch's Cat, sorry you're not feeling well. We promise to be gentle with you today. I'll hold you to that. Thank you. Lyme, yeah, I might give that a shot too. Can't feel anxiety with seizure tablets. Okay, well, that kind of makes sense because I don't know exactly what the seizure tablets do, but if they chemically alter your autonomic nervous response, it kind of makes sense. I mean, a person, if they're drunk, can't feel anxiety. It's chemically there's a chemical intervention, if you will, right? It's not organic, and this does bring up a really interesting point, which is how many people are drinking alcohol or taking different kinds of drugs, legal and illegal, because they feel anxious, because they have social anxiety, because they feel anxiety and it's undefined. No one can explain why they feel this way. Or they have panic attacks, or they just feel stressed out all the time. How many people are smoking cigarettes for this reason? How many people are overeating? The linkage between our emotional state and eating is a very, very strong and overwhelming linkage. This is where, and forgive me if you've heard me say this before, but emotional eating, comfort food, all of these phrases prove basically that link between our eating behavior, even the kind of food we eat, how often we eat, when we eat, and feeling stress, anxiety, and other words that we use to describe the fight or flight aspect of the autonomic nervous system. I did talk about, how diet is related to anxiety. So that's one of the ways. It would be this response to feeling anxious, and using it almost like a drug, using food almost like a drug, using liquor like what it is, which is a drug. And it's not, and these are people that are probably not just having a couple sips of a glass of wine. They might be having 2 glasses of wine or 3 glasses of wine. I have clients who, when I started working with them, were drinking 2-3 glasses of wine a night, struggling with weight. And as you get older, now struggling with memory loss and all these other side effects that come as a result of needing to rely on something like that, so you don't feel stressed out, so you don't feel anxious all the time. The other one that I think is really fascinating about diet, is caffeine. So we all know that when you drink caffeine, you feel a certain clarity in your mind. You feel like you have energy, whereas 10 minutes ago, you felt like you had to go back to sleep no matter what. You just had to go back to sleep. How am I going to get through this day? I feel so tired. I feel so exhausted. Well, caffeine works by stimulating an artificial response, a stress response in the autonomic nervous system. It creates a sympathetic response. So your body dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream, and it's the adrenaline that tells your body, oh, you're being attacked by a lion. It's time to have your heart beating like mad. All the energy goes into your muscles so that you can run or fight, and you feel almost like this instant state of alertness. Well, like any drug, the longer you do it, the more you need to get the same result. So whether it's drinking alcohol, or it's snorting cocaine, or it's caffeine, over time, it begs you to do more and more and more of it. And then it obviously has a whole host of side effects. And my question was, how many people do you think are addicted to certain things because they have this underlying condition that we're going to call anxiety today? And what if that person could be organically freed of the anxiety? They might look at the caffeine, they might look at the alcohol, they might look at the cocaine and just go, no thanks, I don't need it. It makes me feel like crap in other ways. The idea, and again, I'm not a doctor, so please do your own research, but drinking 1 cup of coffee, 2 cups of coffee, now it's 3 cups of coffee, now it's a pot of coffee, over time, it's going to tap into your adrenal glands, and the adrenals are going to go, lion's charging, lion's charging, lion's charging. And over time, the adrenals are going to have a diminished ability to respond by producing all this adrenaline. And at a certain point, it can actually cause adrenal exhaustion. And now you drink the caffeine, nothing really happens because you've overtaxed the system. All right, let's see who else is here and if we have any comments or questions. Here's Kristen Taylor, Beaumont. Good to have you here, Kristen. Thank you. Thanks for showing up. Miriam, wow, great to see you virtually. Thank you so much for being here for us. Take good care of yourself. We really appreciate you being here with us now, and please take good care of yourself. Absolutely, will do. As I mentioned, this is I did a test a few weeks ago, and it's kind of following up on after I was diagnosed with leukemia. This was, oh God, how many years ago? 19 years ago or something. And I worked with a naturopath. They found that I had these heavy metals in my body. We worked on chelating them out. And then I went back and did some more heavy metal testing recently. And it showed that certain metals now are either gone or significantly reduced, but there are other dangerous metals that are still at a high level. So I'm working on getting those out. And one of the side effects of getting these metals out of your body are things like flu-like symptoms, which is weird. Like having, hot and cold, chills, hot, just like you have a fever, but no fever at all. Wild stuff. But I'm kind of excited to get this crap out of me. Kristen is from Manchester. Okay, Manchester, England, I'm guessing, right? Good to have you here. Kristen says, my anxiety has always been with me since childhood, and I never knew what it was. Okay, so this brings up a point that I would like to make. And I'm not trying to say that this is a panacea. I'm not trying to say that this is a cure-all. I think in terms of firing on all cylinders? How can we get the most amount of factors working in your favor when you're dealing with something, intense or something important? How can we get the most number of things, if there's a scale, the most number of things on the side of the scale where you want things to go rather than where they've been? So what I like to say to my clients is that we all are walking around, as adults, whatever age you are, walking around holding the hand of a 4-year-old version of you. So Kristen, you have the hand, metaphorically, of a 4-year-old you. And everything she hears, in other words, everything you say, everything you do, everything you think goes directly into her mind. There's no filter. And we say children are like sponges. They take everything in and they take it in literally. So one of the things that you can do, and again, this is just trying to stack the deck in your favor, is linguistically distance yourself linguistically from, in this case, anxiety. So when you say my anxiety, most common thing for people to say, even doctors will say that, how's your anxiety doing? Well, you want to linguistically, as I said, separate yourself from it or distance yourself from it. What I did with leukemia is I never called it mine. I called it the leukemia diagnosis, right? Because I wanted to linguistically separate myself from it, which does have the effect of reducing the amount of stress you feel about something, right? The tighter you are with it, like if you've got your arms around it, the more in general it's going to trouble you. So I recommend that you consider thinking about the language and thinking about, well, what would it be like? Because you still get the meaning across if you say, oh, I had an experience with the anxiety, the symptoms of anxiety a couple of days ago. And then the next step from there is to determine, for example, how long have you been dealing with this? Like if you're, I don't know how old you are, I'm just going to make up a number. If you're 46 years old, when did this start? This experience that you're having now that you're calling anxiety, when did it start? What was going on in your life at the time? Were there any kind of traumas that were happening where it really ramped up, or it just started like somebody pushed a button? Because that can often give us a clue as to what it's related to, because that anxiety experience is resting on something, just like a superstructure of a building or a house has to rest on a foundation. There has to be a foundation of the things that we don't want in order to support their very existence. And the essence of my work, I would say, is to help people find that root cause, the foundation of what it is that they don't want. And through healing that original cause or causes, it's like we pull the foundation out from underneath what's holding up anxiety, and then the anxiety collapses. It can't sustain itself without, in plant terms, without a root system, without soil. So if you feel like sharing more information about when this started, what it feels like, then feel free to do so. But I appreciate your comment. Let's see, where are we here? Scrolling down. Here is Sarah from Atlanta. Good to see you, Sarah. Glad you're here. Barbara Schaberdahl, welcome back. It's great to see you too. Oh, awesome. Thinking of questions. Fire away. Kathy, it's good to see you. Hi, I only experience anxiety at night once I lay my head down to go to sleep. I move between the mental state of thinking I'm having a heart attack to knowing logically that it is a panic attack. Okay, so oftentimes when people have this experience, when it only happens, as you're describing, at night, or when things get really quiet, it's often the case that person, and you can tell us whether this is true or not, is a person who constantly keeps themselves busy, which is almost like being on a drug. As long as the mind is occupied with other things and or the body is occupied with other things, it's like it keeps that experience of anxiety, in your case, at bay. But as soon as all the electronic devices are turned off, as soon as you're not using your mind to work on something, as soon as you're not using your body to ambulate or exercise or whatever it is you do, it's like this demon from the past comes forward And now, here comes that feeling. Now, what can really confuse things is if all you're aware of is the feeling, and you're like, what the hell? Why am I having this experience? Well, what I can say is that, based on my experience, that in your subconscious mind, something unresolved, something painful, could be from childhood, could be from 10 years ago, could be from a previous lifetime, is coming back. And the anxiety is a form of pain. And I say the purpose of pain is to alert you that there's something wrong. And then to trace, almost like a car mechanic, that pain, in this case anxiety, back to its origin, back to its root cause. And when we find the root cause, I'm saying we're going to find a trauma or something you perceived as a trauma. Could have been left alone in the crib as a little kid, right? And your parents might have been loving parents, but they were just in the other room and they didn't realize, maybe they couldn't hear you. They didn't realize that you were in distress. That can be perceived as a trauma by somebody. It could be a past lifetime where there was, some kind of violence or something, or it could be something from your present life where there was a significant trauma. Whatever it is, we need to find it. We need to trace our way back to it and find it. And when we find it, then we need to resolve it where it lives, which is deep in your subconscious mind. Because once the subconscious mind stands down, once the subconscious mind says that is no longer a threat to Kata, then I can step down too, so that when she's not busy, when she gets quiet, we can remain quiet. I'm talking about the subconscious mind and its control over your autonomic nervous system. So thank you so much for making that point, and thanks for being here. It's really good to see you. All right, Suzanne Livingston. I do the emotional eating. It gives me a sense of comfort. Growing up, my mom was controlling, so I found that what I ate was something I could control. Absolutely, yeah, right? I mean, any kind of drug, and I'm using that term very widely. So I'm going to say pornography for some people is a drug, gambling for some people is a drug, and food behaves in this respect like a drug. And all of the drugs that we use, we often use them to move out of pain. And the moving out of pain might simply be by distracting ourselves. I mean, it could be what Dara was talking about, where you sort of numb part of your body, and that gets you out of the pain. But it could also be distracting. So yes, control. Yeah, I can control this food that I eat, absolutely. But for me, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, I don't. But for me, I think more in terms of distraction. Right? So if I'm in a miserable situation as a child or as an adult and I can't really get out of it, maybe for me, eating a certain kind of food, a certain amount of food, while I'm eating it might give me that distraction, right? The act of eating, but also the pleasure that comes with it. The pleasure is known to dull certain kinds of parts of the nervous system, where people would feel physical pain or emotional pain. So yeah, and then the thing with what you're saying is that even though you're an adult now, that call it a trauma of growing up with your mom under certain circumstances might still be alive in your subconscious mind. If it's still alive, we have to find that younger version of you and help her heal and then reintegrate this inner child, if you will, back into you as an adult. So whenever there's a trauma, there is the mind fractures. And what I say is that when that part of you is triggered, it's this younger version of you that comes forward. So, you could have two partners in a romantic relationship arguing with each other, and one partner, automatically, we're not consciously doing this, but automatically, they feel flooded, and it's like a 7-year-old comes forward. And then the other partner, gets triggered, set off, flooded, and now a 9-year-old comes forward. Now you get a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old arguing with each other. Where's that going to go? Probably not to a good place. And both people are solidly in their lizard brain. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and I totally get that for you, the food was the way to feel control, and the food, I'm saying, was also a way to distract yourself, to sort of numb out the unpleasant experience. And back to that concept of a foundation, that certain kinds of feelings and behavior is resting on that foundation. Call it the anxiety. We need to find out, what is that constructed of? And when we heal what it's constructed of, this thing dissipates, it dissolves, and the anxiety collapses with it. Unless, of course, a lion charges you, and you want that. You don't want to be, like Dara was talking about, on certain kinds of medication, and the lion's coming at you because you won't be prepared to defend yourself. Not that that happens a lot, but we do want that part of us to be online, if you will. Okay. The Witch's Cat says, I've been living with anxiety so long, I don't know what I'd do without it. My anxiety motivates me to get things done in a weird way. Okay, this is a great point, actually. And it just came up today with someone where we were talking about anger. And her response was, who will I be without the anger? Does the anger kind of protect me? Like, what? I don't know that I want to lose that. Well, let me just put this back up here. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying that the anxiety is actually motivating you to get things done, maybe in the way that caffeine does. I always believe, and maybe I'm wrong, that anything toxic, right? So kind of like the autonomic nervous system, it's either fight or flight or rest and digest. That something that you put in your mouth, something that you put on your skin, something that's floating around in your brain is either healthy, like healthy food, or it's toxic. And I've never been convinced over the last 16 years that removing, kind of like I'm doing with the chelation, removing something toxic is bad. I've never been convinced of that. When people let go of certain things like anger or anxiety, it frees up other potentially untapped parts of you to be who you were meant to be. I don't think our Creator organized our being around being slothful, lazy, incompetent, pick your adjective. I think in our healthiest state, we are the most effective. We can bring to bear our most powerful tools and gifts that we brought with us into this world. And I understand how, if you've been living with something for a long time, it can be a little disconcerting to let that go. But it's also, when we do the work, it's never just sort of taken from you. There is a process that you engage in where you've got your spiritual guides and your spiritual counsel around you. And you are making the decision as to what is best, highest and best for you. And you're able to ask advice of your spiritual guides about what's highest and best for you. You can even get a preview of what it's going to feel like when you have let go of the trauma that is the foundation of the anxiety. And to a person, over the last 16 years, people say to me, oh my God, I feel so good. When's the last time you felt this good? I've never felt this good before. And if you think about what comes along with this, like thinking going from your lizard brain to your prefrontal cortex, more energy, the creative capacity that all human beings have that really distinguishes us, if you will, from everything else, including AI. This comes online when you take something toxic away. So really good point, though. Thank you for making it. Here is Sarah. Missing Gredwe. Not sure what that is, Sarah. If you want to let me know, you can put another comment in. Tart says, being stuck, trapped anywhere gets me. I get the flight response. Stuck in traffic, long lines, etc. Yikes. I'm getting a lot better, but it's a conscious effort to remain calm. Okay. The first place I go with this is, my guess is that there was a time in the past when you were trapped, right? It could have been as a child, maybe even being swaddled or something, Or you were trapped in your crib and you couldn't get out and you needed to get out. Your diaper was dirty or what have you. Or maybe you had some other experience where kids locked you in a coat closet. Or this goes back to a past lifetime where you were in a ship that was sinking and there was a little air pocket in there and the ship is sinking, 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 sinking. Or something else that's similar to that. And so if that past life experience, let's just say for the sake of argument, is the root cause, then the idea is you brought that memory at a subconscious level back into this lifetime. And when you are stuck in traffic or you're stuck in an elevator or you're stuck somewhere else, subconscious mind goes, trigger. Oh my God, it's happening again. And when that happens, it fires off the stress response, the anxiety response. Sorry about that, folks. If that's the case, in this hypothetical example of being in a past lifetime and, being trapped below decks when a ship you're on is sinking, then we go back into that past lifetime so we can really understand all the dynamics. Because for you, maybe you had kids with you and you were really worried about them. Maybe you had said, I don't want to be below decks. I want to be up top, and somebody prevented you from doing that. Maybe you were a prisoner. I don't know. But do you see hypothetically how the subconscious mind that has a perfect understanding and memory of everything, where your conscious mind has got just a tiny fraction of what has happened in this life, can say that is a threatening situation, and my job, subconscious mind, is to protect you. So when something gets triggered just by being in traffic, because I get the same feeling, I'm going to kick off this response of, you need to get the hell out of this cabin right now because this ship is going down. Does that make sense? Okay, hopefully it does. Thank you for sharing that, Tart. And feel free to follow up if you wish and let me know if what I said strikes a chord, or if there's any time that you're aware of in this lifetime where maybe you were restrained or trapped or confined in some way. Okay, Barber Shopperdoll says, my current anxiety is trying to start a new career, but I feel my anxiety is pulling me backwards. Worried of not being able to succeed due to past failures and going back to what I've always done. Adrenal exhaustion, never heard of that before. Yeah, that's a thing. I don't know if allopathic physicians would commonly discuss this sort of thing, but certainly naturopathic physicians would talk about it, and you could definitely Google it and learn learn more about it. Anytime you just overtax something, you can lead to a complete exhaustion, the inability of that part of your body to produce adrenaline. Okay, so it sounds like you have, in the first part of your comment, it sounds like you have, due to past failures. That's the part that leapt out at me. Due to past failures, you're fearful that you won't succeed in the future. So two things. One is, we know that those past failures are behaving kind of like a trauma. I don't know that the average person on the street would call these traumas, but they are if it's affecting your current life and preventing you from fully realizing your potential. It also may be that there was some kind of catastrophic failure, again, in a past lifetime. It could be that you took on a belief from a caregiver when you were young that money doesn't grow on trees, you better work for someone else because that's safer. I'm guessing that these past failures maybe were your own initiative. Whatever it is, whatever those failures are, we basically want to neutralize them, right? We don't want them exerting their power over you in your present life. And that goes for whether it's a past lifetime, in which case we would need to do a past life regression to see, okay, where was this failure? What happened? Then we would know what we would need to do to heal it. Or it's something that happened earlier in your present life. And there are a couple of ways of dealing with that. We could do a present life regression, or we could do something that I'm really excited about. I've been using this a lot over the last 5 months, maybe 6 months. It's called havening. I keep meaning to make a video on this because it's possible to do havening by yourself. I've done it on myself quite a few times, and it's really efficient at dealing with traumas and taking a trauma down from a 10 to sometimes a 0 or a 2 or a 1 or a 3 or what have you. But in a way, we're taking an eraser, and we're sort of erasing or neutralizing that experience. And we are also, whether we do a past life regression, present regression, healing the inner child, or in some cases with havening, we're rewriting the timeline. So your conscious mind can remember exactly what happened. It's not brainwashing you, but it is rewriting the timeline in your subconscious mind. So when the subconscious mind goes back to that thing that previously it said, that's dangerous, and anything that triggers that, I've got to kick off this fight or flight response. Now that we've rewritten the timeline, subconscious says, that is no longer a threat. So I can stand down. I don't need to send this person into, fight or flight, thinking in the lizard brain, adrenaline and cortisol going through the body. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I'm glad you're here and glad you asked the question. Okay, Dara says, Peter, did you get the original dental fillings back in the 80s? Or maybe from firefighting, maybe industrial buildings, out of interest, heavy metals as a gas. So Dara, just for those of you that may have tuned in later, I was apologizing for being kind of under the weather, which is actually, I looked this up. That phrase comes from being on a ship back in the day. And if there was heavy seas and a person was feeling sick, they would send them down below deck, below the weather, so under the weather. I was talking about getting this chelation therapy, which is this long odyssey of dealing with a leukemia diagnosis almost 20 years ago, and all these different heavy metals in my body. And so Dara was asking if I had dental fillings back in the 80s. Well, you're going to like this, Dara. I'm so much older. I remember getting the dental fillings, which have the silver ones, which have mercury in them. They're 50% mercury. They also have other kinds of metals in them. I got those in the 60s. That's how old I am. I got those in the 60s and into the early 1970s from this lunatic of a dentist. So that was part of it. And yes, firefighting was the other part, because we deal with all different kinds of products that are on fire. And even though we wear an air pack and we're breathing air out of a tank, you're still getting it on your skin, the soot. And once the fire has been knocked down, they're starting to change this now, but once the fire is knocked down, the standard operating procedure was to take off. You're not breathing air anymore. You're just breathing the ambient air, and everything's smoking. And so you're breathing in benzene and probably mercury and lead and cadmium and nickel and all this other crap. So yeah, that's probably part of it too. Hopefully that answered your questions. Here's Barbara Shopperdoll again. She says, I'm joining a choir that my boyfriend's ex-wife is in. Okay, I want to avoid interaction with her, but it's forced interaction. She likes me, but the feeling isn't mutual. I always have anxiety walking in. Okay, so if we were working together, I would have you holding a pendulum and I would be asking you questions. And a pendulum, for those of you that don't know, is a way of communicating with your subconscious mind. I have a video on my channel, BlueSky Hypnosis on YouTube. Just type in pendulum. If you just click on that little magnifying glass, and it will bring up this video about how to use a pendulum. I would have you using that pendulum and asking questions like, and then I would ask you questions, obviously, like, did someone ever cheat on you? Did you ever cheat on someone? Did your parents have any kind of an issue with one person being, in quotes, stolen out of this romantic relationship? Did you have an experience like that in a past lifetime where you were on either side of some kind of infidelity? Another question would be, do you share a karmic relationship with his ex-wife? Is her being in the choir with you bringing up feelings of low self-worth, low self-love, low self-esteem? If so, what is the root of that low self-love or low self-worth? Where did that start? Earlier in this life or in a past life? And you see where I'm going, which is, let's find the foundation that the experience, the symptom of feeling anxiety when you walk into a choir rehearsal or something has to rest on. Like the anxiety, the pain just tells us that there's something wrong. And I feel like in our culture, we fixate too much on the pain. It's like fixating too much on the smoke that's coming out of the engine rather than tracing it down and finding out, okay, what has gone wrong in the bowels of the engine that we need to replace. And once we do that, the smoke's going to go away. We don't have to fixate on it. We don't have to blow it away with a fan. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And if you want to follow up on anything I said, please feel free. Here is Miriam. Miriam says, you helped me so much with my personal fears of anxiety. A huge thank you to you. It made a huge difference for me. I will be in the US very soon, and I hope we can see each other in person. I hope so too, Miriam. It was awesome working with you, and if you ever need anything else, I'm always here, of course. And I'm just so glad that you had a really good experience and that anxiety has abated significantly. That's obviously why I do this work. So thanks for making that comment. Really appreciate it. Here is Kristen Taylor, who says, thank you. You really make sense. Yes, Manchester is in the UK, and and that's where Peaky Blinders takes place, right? The Netflix series, I think it takes place. Oh no, it's Birmingham. I think it's Birmingham. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, Manchester is in the UK, and I have the pleasure to listen to your to listen to your meditation every night. They are fantastic. Christiane is a male, not female name. Thank you. Oh, cool. All right. Sorry about that. And Barbara Schopperdahl says, I believe my brother-in-law had a past life together where we didn't get along or something. Okay. So we'd want to resolve that, right? Because something that's broken will continue to produce the same symptoms until you fix what's broken. And just because somebody dies and then they come back, it doesn't mean that broken thing got fixed. So the main way that we are hurt and the main way that we hurt other people is in relationship, right? Like everybody I work with, for the most part, it's something about the childhood, something about a romantic relationship, something about their relationship with their kids, something about, being abandoned by their parents, something about, problems with a boss at work, or perhaps even a karmic relationship from a past lifetime where somebody killed somebody else on a battlefield, or, accused them of something that they didn't do in a past lifetime. So we want to get to the root cause always, and almost always, often, it has something to do with a relationship, and we want to fix that relationship because we tend to travel with each other in these groups, kind of like a repertory theater of, a company of actors. And maybe we take on different roles in different lifetimes, but we're kind of traveling with the same people, more or less. And if we've got these thorny problems with people, we want to fix it, because here's the thing: if we don't, guess what? We're coming back and going to be with them in the same situation with maybe a different role for you and for me in the next lifetime. Better to get it fixed now. Plus, it can fix some of these other issues that are going on. Kata says, keeping myself busy with work and TV and recovery, 14 months sober. So yes, well, congratulations to you, Kata. That is absolutely fantastic. Christiane is saying, my opposite is not going to sleep. Mine is the middle of the night or as I wake up. Also, I hope you feel better, as it is such a pleasure to be part of your chat. Well, thank you so much for that. When somebody wakes up in the middle of the night, and I think what you're saying is you wake up in the middle of the night with anxiety, or perhaps you wake up in the morning with anxiety. Where I would go to immediately with that is that when your conscious mind is out of the way, when you can't distract yourself, what comes up? Dreams. And that's controlled entirely by the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind may be going through over and over again a particular situation that happened earlier in this life or in a past lifetime. Or maybe it's creating metaphors around some old trauma. And when you wake up in the morning, you might not remember those dreams. Or if you do, it might be like, well, that's weird. There was a purple giraffe in somebody's living room and someone else was playing the bongo drums. I don't know what that means, and so it just gets pushed away. I used to do that all the time. But if you think in terms of metaphor, dreams can make a lot more sense. So if you don't do it already, if you're not remembering what your dreams are, I recommend that you keep a notepad by the side of your bed and a pen. And when you wake up, write down anything that maybe you remember, even if it's fragmentary. And before you go to sleep at night, you might also ask, just kind of program your own mind saying, I want to remember all the details of my dream. I want to remember them clearly in the morning. And just keep repeating that to yourself for a minute or so, and then go to sleep. And over time, this can actually make it easier for you to remember your dreams, because your dreams are probably giving you the key as to what that foundation is that's causing you to wake up in this panic or in this anxiety, whatever we want to call that. So thanks for sharing that. All right. So Sarah says, the linguistic connection is so interesting. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and when anyone says I'm, and then the word bipolar, it makes me feel like I'm holding a heavy weight. Absolutely. And honestly, I mean, I felt like I ran into this when I was diagnosed with leukemia. You know, people would say things like in doctor's offices. And what I know as a hypnotist is that there are these different methods for driving something into the subconscious mind, because we have protective mechanisms to prevent something from getting in there, which is good and bad. Like if you want to learn to speak another language, it's going to protect that from getting in there. But you can bypass this critical factor, it's called, this barrier to getting something into your subconscious mind to turn it into an unconscious competence. One of those things is hypnosis. Another one of those things is an authority figure. So if an authority figure like a doctor or a nurse practitioner or someone in a doctor's office says you're, and then they list some disease, it goes directly into your subconscious mind where you're more likely to take ownership of it. And we want, as I said before, start with the linguistics. We want that far away where you can still say the same thing, but it's not taking ownership of it, because you are not anxiety. That's not who you are. That's an experience that you have at certain intervals when certain triggers happen. And when whatever is being triggered, the foundation is healed and the trigger occurs, you're not going to have that experience anymore. You know, like I can get it if someone says, this is my age. Well, I think we're sort of these internal beings, but that makes more sense to me. Or if they say, you know, I've got brown hair or something. But to say that this condition is yours, I think is destructive, and I feel like there's no need for it, because there are other ways of describing it where they're not going to confuse anyone. No one has been confused when I said, I was diagnosed with, rather than I have, it's mine. So yeah, I agree with you, Sarah. Let's see here. Witch's Cat says, after my mom passed in January, I became paralyzed with anxiety. I actually used a couple of your videos to get me moving again, so I owe you a huge thank you, Peter. Still a work in progress, though. Well, you are certainly welcome, Witch's Cat. And that's a significant trauma. And my own experience with the death of a parent, excuse me, is that I think on some very primitive, visceral level, it informs us that we have gone from, child to parent to, to a grandparent, say. And the next step after that is probably we reach our mortality. I think that was my experience. My experience was that it brought the death of my father brought my own mortality into a clearer relief, a clearer view. And I think that, along with the grief that you feel about the loss of somebody perhaps that you were close to, those two things together definitely can be anxiety provoking. And I actually think, so if this comes down to so there's grief, and then maybe there's like an existential fear of your own mortality. Doing work around the grief, where you, in hypnosis, where you meet with your mom in hypnosis, And you do this several times. In my experience, what happens is the first time people, erupt in tears and sadness, totally normal. Next time, erupt in tears and sadness. The next time, a little bit of tears, but mostly joy. The next time, total joy. Because I think it awakens, again, a kind of primal part of us that actually knows that we cannot die. Our bodies can, but our consciousness cannot. And this has a way of not only creating a sort of salve for the grief, turning an open wound into a scar, but also helping with that existential fear of death. Like, oh, right, her body died, but I can still connect to her. Even going into a past lifetime, I think, speaks to this deeper part of us. Like, oh, right, I did live that lifetime, around the time of the French Revolution. And I know that I died then, and here I am now. Like, and I'm not saying that the fear of death ever goes away entirely. I don't know that we wanted to, but it can be diminished substantially. So hopefully something in what I said is helpful. And thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm so sorry about the loss of your mom. Okay. I want to talk about next week and then take a couple more comments. It's here. So this is something I haven't done in a while, but I thought maybe it's time to do this again. So I call this an open forum or a roundtable. And this is where I'm relying on you guys, and I'll prepare a couple of questions ahead of time, but I'm relying on you guys to come with questions or come with comments about any of the topics that we discuss. So, any of the sort of conditions that hypnosis can be useful to help with. It could be migraine headaches, could be stress and anxiety, it could be public speaking, it could be relationships, it could be money and finances, it could be some things around how can you use hypnosis to help with your physical health or other aspects of your mental health. It could be the spiritual piece of past life regression, life between lives regression. We have a consciousness after we die, and that consciousness is awake and aware up until we're born into the next lifetime. And it makes choices. It makes choices about parents and socioeconomic conditions and sometimes about diseases and illnesses. And it often chooses what kind of body the person's going to have, the other kinds of challenges that they're going to have or experience, what the lesson is for this lifetime, how many lives you've worked on that lesson, what is your spirit name, what does that spirit name mean, is that related to your current lifetime, issues about karma, visiting the Akashic records. All of these things are ripe, wide open topics. If you guys want to come next time and just ask whatever you want, prepare it ahead of time, that would be fantastic. But if you don't, if something occurs to you, just ask away. Can also be about spiritual entities attaching to people and how that can affect you. What makes you vulnerable to a spiritual entity attachment? How does a spiritual entity differ from sort of like a demonic possession, something that's evil? How do you become vulnerable to that? What do you do to get rid of these things? What happens when you get rid of it? How do you protect yourself? What are the activities that you could be doing in your everyday life that could be leading to this sort of thing? So the floor is yours next Friday live at 5 if you want to come and just ask these questions. Would love it. All right. Here is Brittany Sturgill. Hello, Brittany. Brittany says, I need energy. This 11/11 has been a hard day for me. And then she says, I have a driving phobia, maybe from a past life. Yeah, it could be. 11/11, the first thing that comes into my mind, well, two things. One is that it's an intensely spiritual number, like 33 is an intensely spiritual number. So all ones is purportedly that your spiritual guidance is talking to you. And the other thing that came to me is 11/11. So today in the United States, it is Veterans Day. That earlier was called Armistice Day, and it's after the end of World War I. World War I, the armistice was signed on November 11th at 11 a.m., 11, 11, 11. And who knows? Were you involved in that conflict in some way? Was somebody that you loved involved in that conflict? The whole driving thing, it could be that, as you say, from a past lifetime, that something involving driving, but it could also be that you were walking across a bridge or something and the bridge collapsed and your mind has conflated driving a car with walking over a bridge or being in a wagon, like a stagecoach or something going over a bridge or just going somewhere and then being attacked by whomever. It could be that your mind is conflating it with being on a ship and then there was some kind of shipping disaster. Something, again, is at the root of that driving phobia. And we can find that. You can play around with that pendulum that I was talking about before. You can work with me. There are other ways of uncovering exactly what that is. And once you've uncovered what it is, there are ways of neutralizing the original insult, the original trauma. And once that's done, when you're driving, subconscious goes, oh, they're driving. Not, oh my God, this is a life and death moment. So yeah, it could have been in a car crash in a past lifetime. This is even more esoteric, but I mentioned a little while ago about spiritual entities. Maybe you have a spiritual entity attached to you that was themselves in a car wreck and died in a car wreck, and then they attach themselves to you. And that the phobia or fear that you feel isn't exactly yours. It might be this entity's. And when you remove the entity, maybe the fear of driving goes away. Whatever it is, it can be resolved. So thanks for sharing that with us. Witch's Cat says, don't forget the thumbs up. Guys, it might help Peter feel better. Absolutely. That's always appreciated. Always appreciated, as is subscribing if you haven't already, or sharing something that has value for you, that somebody in your network might see that and get value from it. So all of that is absolutely appreciated. And I thank you for that, Witch's Cat. Suzanne Livingston is saying, how do I figure out what caused my initial anxiety in the early years? What process can I do to figure it out? Great question. I would direct you to learning how to use a pendulum. And again, on my YouTube channel, BlueSky Hypnosis, with that little magnifying glass, you can just click that, and now you can search all the videos that I have. And you just type in the word pendulum. And that video will teach you how to use a pendulum. And then you can practice with this pendulum. The pendulum gives you a yes, no, or a maybe answer. And so you can ask questions like, what you basically want to think about doing is winnowing it down, the possibilities. So you can say, is this particular anxiety caused by a trauma that I suffered earlier in my present life? Yes or no? If you get a no, was this anxiety, created by a trauma I suffered in my past life? Now you get a yes. And now you can start asking other questions like, did I die as a result of this trauma? Was I gravely injured as a result of the trauma? Did I make a catastrophic mistake? You can start winnowing it down. And once you know what it is and where it happened, now you know what you need to do to go after it. I need to do a past life regression, or I need to do havening, or I need to do a present day regression, or other kinds of tools that are out there, like EMDR, for example. So hopefully that answered your question. All right, let's take one or two more. Here is Trisha, Free to Be Me. I remember we were given the mercury that was left to play with it as it beads up. Yes. If you're probably around my age, then yeah, if they used to have these thermometers that you put in your mouth, and they were glass, and if that thing broke, the mercury that was inside of it would spill out onto a table or the floor, and it was called mercury. The other name for it was quicksilver, because it sort of moves all around. When you touch it, it just sort of jumps and moves. And this is incidentally, for those of you who care about etymology of words, where the term quack, Q-U-A-C-K, referring to a medical professional, a quack is someone, a doctor, who years and years ago used mercury as a medicine for people. They called it calomel, put it in capsule form and then had you take it. Somebody that gave mercury to people was called a quack from quacksilver. That's the German pronunciation of quicksilver. In English it's mercury or quicksilver, and in German it's quacksilver. So somebody who gave mercury in terms of calomel to a person in a pill was called a quack. Hope somebody enjoys that. All right, here is let's do two more here. Tart, makes sense. Thanks very much. I have pretty much no problem when I'm with people I trust, but alone or with people I don't quite feel at ease with, unless I know I can freely exit. It's difficult. Yeah, there's some kind of root cause there. And maybe in the root cause, you were with strangers or you were with people that did not have your best interest at heart. And so again, finding the root cause of this thing and resolving it where it lives, which is in the past and in your subconscious mind. And remember, to your subconscious mind, everything is now. There is no past to the subconscious mind. Everything is now. So if you combine that fact with its role is to protect you, it starts to make sense why certain things would trigger this kind of defensive response. Alrighty. Jennifer Donovan. Hey, all these people from Ireland. This is awesome. Hi, Peter. Jen from Ireland. Had first panic attack years ago when stopped at a red traffic light. Seem to be getting stronger these days in all different situations, even when at home by myself. Okay, so another thing to understand about the subconscious mind is that it is an associating, making mechanism. In other words, if the subconscious mind says, that's dangerous, then it can say, well, that's like that, so that must be dangerous too. And then over time it can say, and that is like that, so that must be dangerous too. And it can sort of metastasize, if you will, over time. And this alternative view, because this isn't how the mainstream thinks about it, explains all kinds of things of why a fear can grow over time. And even, and I won't get into it today, but I'll talk about it maybe next week if somebody's interested, how an allergy behaves this way. And how an allergy can actually be due to the associating making phenomenon in the subconscious mind that says, oh, I was drinking this when my parents were arguing, so there must be something about this that causes that, which I don't want that anymore. And the body can say, well, let's just, if you break out in hives, you won't drink this anymore. And then it can say, well, what's like that? Well, this drink is like that, and so is that one. And so over time, the allergy can actually grow or metastasize. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. So Tart is asking, is the pendulum similar to EMDR? That's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Actually, it is not. The pendulum is a form of kinesiology. And this is how you can use a tool of some kind. Pendulum is one of the tools to ask the body to give you a yes or a no, and I add in maybe, to questions. So if you say, is eating this piece of wood good for me? The body, through a pendulum, for example, should say no. No, that's not good for you. And if I ask, is an apple, organic apple good for me to eat? It should say yes. Havening, that's the term that I used before, I find behaves similarly to EMDR. It is not EMDR, but it behaves similarly in that it is a way of neutralizing old trauma. Okay, with that, I just want to thank all you guys for showing up Friday Live at 5. Love to see you here, really do. And love your questions, love your comments. And I just feel so, warm, like held almost, especially when I'm feeling like crap. And I appreciate you sticking with me through my couple of coughing fits I had here and there. And I will sincerely look forward to seeing you here again if you're able to. Join for next Friday Live at 5, where we're going to be doing this open forum, this open roundtable. You can bring your questions, you can make them up on the fly, your comments, whatever. You can talk about anything that we deal with on a regular basis here in this forum, or anything that's going on in your life. In fact, I kind of like that. I kind of like when somebody says, hey, I've got this thing. And then we kind of go back and forth a little bit and dig deeper. And sometimes we can figure out sort of the the outline of it, right? What may be going on for that particular person in that particular scenario that they're dealing with. So I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and look forward to seeing you next Friday live at 5 right here.